First question. What percent of married women do you think are unfaithful to their husbands? And your answer could be totally different than mine. I'm going to just say, I think 25%. And I'm going to be equitable and say, I think 25% of married men are unfaithful as well. And then we want to look at page 515 and see if I can get to that. We'll go to chapter contents, and you can go to the table of contents and then click here and type in 515, push enter, and there we are. Here's our problem. I think it's at the bottom of this page. Yes, it starts right here. And it says exercises 13 through 16 refer to a poll. So this problem right here, we want to read that. And then on the next page are those actual problems. Once it brings that up. There we go. So 13, 14, 15, and 16. So there are the problems that we're looking for you to work. Okay. There we go. And back to here. Okay, so these exercises talk about extramarital affairs. It was conducted in 1988 by Abby, dear Abby. She asked her readers to let her know whether they'd been faithful or unfaithful, and here are their responses in this table. And based on this survey, dear Abby concluded that extramarital affairs among married couples are much less common than people believe. The results were astonishing, she wrote. There are far more faithfully wed couples than I had surmised. So 13, Part A, describe as specifically as you can the sampling frame for this study. So 13, Part A, the sampling frame is. And so who did she choose her sample from? And it's just the people who are reading her column, right? If I wasn't reading her column, I wouldn't have seen her question. I would not have had any chance to send in a response. So the sampling frame is Dear Abby readers. Okay, so part B. Compare and contrast the target population and the sampling frame. So who is she making conclusions about? Who does she want to make conclusions about? Let's see if we can tell. She asked her readers, so that's her sampling frame, and their responses are here. And here is, oh, Dear Abby concluded that extramarital affairs among married couples are much less common than people believe. So the target population, Dear Abby's target population is married couples but her sampling frame is any Dear Abby reader. So you could be a Dear Abby reader who responded and you're not actually married, but maybe you're reporting what you think the answer, like most of your friends say they have, so you just send in a message saying, yeah, I've been unfaithful. Or, so that's her target population is married couples, but her sampling frame is any Dear Abby reader. And so, and then also there are married couples that are not Dear Abby readers. So there are married couples Okay, so there are some who aren't Dear Abby readers, so they're not exactly the same size, her target population and her sampling frame. So that's interesting to know. And then part C, how was the sample chosen? So remember our sampling types, we have convenience, quota, random, and stratified random. So which type of sampling did Dear Abby use? So part C, Dear Abby took a convenience sample. Of readers who chose to respond. So not good, Dear Abby. Part D, 85% of the women who responded to this survey claimed to be faithful. Is 85% a parameter, a statistic, or neither? Well, the 85% is from the survey. Okay, so this is 85% said they were faithful. So this is here. We're saying this is 85% of the women. And this is from our survey, so this is a 85% is a sample statistic. Because it is data from her sample. Okay, and then we're on to 14, part A. 14, part A. Explain why this survey is subject to selection bias. So selection bias, let's go back up and take a look. The sampling frame is smaller than your population, right there. Okay, Dear Abby, is subject to selection bias because the sampling frame is only Dear Abby readers, not all married couples. Okay, part B. Explain why this survey was subject to non-response bias. So non-response bias, if we go back and take a look at that, people fail to return a survey or refuse to participate. Maybe I read her survey and I said, I'm not answering that, I'm busy, which is what I usually do. So Dear Abby's readers could choose not to respond to her question. So non-response is present. Okay, it looks like we're all out of space there. So I might need to open up a new page because I have 2 questions left. Okay, so we're on 15A. And our question is, based on the Dear Abby data, estimate the percentage of married men who are faithful to their spouses. So we'll need to come back here. Married men who are faithful, so we just want to know for the men. So it would be 44,807. Let's see if I have the. So 44,807 divided by 60,550. So 74, so it's 0.74, so my answer is going to be 74% of men were faithful. According to Dear Abby's survey. And then part B, let's see what that one is. Based on the Dear Abby data, estimate the percentage of married people who are faithful to their spouses. So I might have to do a little bit of summing there. So this was 74%, and I can't just add those two because it's over 100%. That we know that's not right. So I do have to add the number of men and the number of women together that were faithful. So where's my 127,318 plus 44,807. So I get 1,72125. And I need to know the total, so I'm going to add these two numbers together, 149,786 plus 60,550, and so I get for the total 210,336. And I know I need to divide by that, so I'm just going to store it in my bin 1, and then I'll take the 125 divided by recall 1, there's my 210, and I get for a total of 82%. So I'll say here 82% of married couples were faithful according to Dear Abby's survey. Okay. Part C. How accurate do you think the estimates in Part A and Part B are? C. I do not think these estimates are accurate. Because many types of bias are present. So we had selection bias, non-response, and then we want to look at the types of sampling errors too. And we don't have chance error. I mean, we have chance error, but a bigger error in this case would be sampling bias. So we have sampling bias. Because it's convenience. Convenience sample. So because there are a lot of types of error present, we can't use the results in any meaningful way. It's just for entertainment. All right, number 16. Let's take a look. If money were no object, could you devise a survey that might give more reliable results than the Dear Abby survey? Describe briefly what you would do. Well, first, if money were no object, the best way to sample would be a census. So, if money were no object, I would take a census of all married people. And it would have to be private. Like, I couldn't ask a husband in front of his wife, did you mess around on her? If I was taking a sample and I asked somebody face to face, were you ever unfaithful to your husband or wife? They might be embarrassed to admit it. So if I could give them some sort of paper survey in private, so that's how we would have to do in private paper survey. So maybe confidential is a better word there. So if we ask them all what they would do, we would do a private or a confidential paper survey, and it would be a census because that is the most accurate. Now, if we couldn't do a census, then I would look at doing a stratified random sample or a random sample of all married people.